Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Fraternity Foodie, and this is episode number 34. We call these episodes Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like good food to bring people together. Today, we have an absolutely incredible guest. I am so pumped up about this. This is Rich Herrera. Rich is a broadcaster. He is a play-by-play announcer. He is a sports anchor. He's a talk radio entertainer. I mean, it goes on and on in terms of the number of things this guy has done over his career. So I feel so blessed to have him on Fraternity Foodie today. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Thank you so much for having me on. And the most important title that I think I've ever had was Fraternity Man.
I love
as a proud Sigma Pi alumni, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here talking with you. Actually, I'm in San Diego, sitting in my backyard today. And I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Excellent. We love it. We have a ton of Sigma Pi listeners, so I'm sure they're really going to get to enjoy meeting you and talking to you and hearing what you're all about. Because I think a lot of the Sigma Pi alumni, the Sigma Pi undergrads, maybe they don't know who you are. And so this is a great way to kind of bring them up to speed. I think it's
Can I share a story with you?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because as Greeks, we all look out for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you know a guy and he was in a fraternity, then you're probably going to be friends. And if he was in your house, you're really going to be friends. And it's very interesting. Like here in San Diego, there's probably 8 of us that live within 15 minutes of each other. We all went to school up in Bakersfield, but we're all down here. We get together. We look out after our kids. But one of the fun things I've been able to do is help other undergrads that were Greek and Sigma Pi in particular get started in the industry. So we were at the winter meetings a couple of years ago, and there were probably 5,000 people looking for a job. And one guy found me. I don't know how he found me. He said, "Hey, I'm a Sigma Pi from UCF." I'm like, okay. He goes, "Hey, I just want to say hi." We ended up finding him a job. So when you're able to do something like that and pay it forward and give back to the alumni that were so good to you, it's really fun.
I agree completely. I've done that a number of times throughout my career, and there's nothing more rewarding than that, to be able to pay it back to another undergrad or a younger fraternity brother to say, "Hey, I got a lot out of this experience. I hope you do as well." So,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. So why did you choose Bakersfield?
So I was one of the first to go to college in my family. My dad was a cop. His dad was a migrant farm worker, so we didn't really know much about college or even thought about it growing up in Salinas, California. So when I got done with high school, my dad looked at me and goes, "Well, you're going to either go to college or you're going to go to work." I said, "Well, I think I'll go to work."
Yeah.
And he says, "All right, your choices are the junior college or the 4-year school." And most of the people I went to high school with that I didn't really get along with were all going to the junior college. So me and turns out to be one of my pledge brothers who graduated together, we both went to Cal State Bakersfield, the 4-year school, and one of the first things we saw were posters for Sigma Pi and for Rush Week, and I was like, "Come on, we got to go to a party. I've always wanted to be in a fraternity," and it was just fate.
That's great. That's a great story. So what was it about Sigma Pi once you met the guys? I mean, what was the draw? Why did you like them?
I'll embarrass a alumni that I'm still in touch with named Ken Ernest. I met Ken, and I'm like, "This is the coolest guy in the world. I want to be like him." Larry Winter was another. There's a bunch of guys, and they were just genuinely nice guys. But the one thing I liked about the house was and I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but it was so diverse, different backgrounds, different people. And there's a guy named Frank Melendez who was a big football player. I mean, the guy was huge. And he said, "When I played football, I'd probably not be friends with any of you." And he said, "But by joining the fraternity, I've learned to accept people for who they are." So he goes, "There's guys that were not athletes and they weren't the cool guys, but I learned to appreciate them and cherish them as brothers." And it was that blue collar mentality that I think still personifies that group of guys that still get together, everybody's gone on to be successful, but because they all came from humble beginnings, you really appreciate who you are and where you are today.
I love that answer because it's all about the relationships. And that's a good lesson for the undergrads, because the undergrads sometimes feel like they have to spend a ton of money in order to attract people into their organization. But if they just focus on the relationships, then that's all you need. It was that one person that drove you to Sigma Pi. You wanted to hang out with him more.
And here's what I'll tell anybody, whether it's Sigma Pi or SAE or Sigma Chi or anybody else. When I was a chapter director at the University of Arizona, and I've been involved with a couple different chapters, I remind guys, we're looking at freshmen. We're looking at 17, 18-year-old people. They're incomplete. I have a son who's a freshman in high school, or a freshman in college now. And what I tell people is, and unfortunately a lot of the undergrads don't get this, is look for the potential in a guy. Because this kid is going to come in here just like an Animal House, you know, hey, they used to beat me up once a week, and Boone, you had a face like a pepperoni pizza, and everybody thought the stork was brain dead. The 17, 18-year-old that are rolling in as freshmen are not complete. They will get better. They will get stronger. They'll get better academically. They'll get better having girls come by the house. They're going to mature. So unfortunately, I think a lot of times when rush goes on, they're looking for that top drawer guy right there. And honestly, at 17, 18, there are not a lot of them. And if they are, they probably are that peaked in high school kid, not the kid that's going to come in is very awkward and very insecure with himself. You miss those guys, and those guys end up being the ones that are going to mature and get better as their 4 years of college go on and become the men that you see today.
Mm-hmm. How do you think being a fraternity man has helped you over your career?
Wow. You know what? Confidence. Like anybody else. And I see this with my son. And we talk about it. It's self-confidence. What do you have that you can hang your hat on? And coming into college, I didn't have much. I mean, I talked a good game. I probably talked too much because I was very insecure, like most 17, 18 years olds are. But once I established myself and I had something to hang my hat on, I was good enough to be a member of Sigma Pi, and I had a bunch of great guys that supported me. That was the first stage of confidence, self-confidence I ever had as a kid. And it's always been something that every once in a while I'll still say it, and it'll just pop in the back of my head. You know, hi, I'm Rich Herrera of Sigma Pi, and it makes me feel confident, and it lets me know that there is something special about me.
Wow, that's a great answer. Now, today's college campuses, as you know, they're becoming more and more diverse every single year. So in your opinion, how can fraternities and sororities, how can they be more welcoming to a more diverse population, such as students of Mexican American heritage, for example?
See, and when I said diverse earlier, I wasn't talking racial or nationality or ethnicity. I was talking diverse backgrounds of guys. Like growing up in California, I really didn't see color or know anything. I just didn't. It wasn't something that if you grow up on the West Coast, you get a lot of. Unfortunately now, and I see this with my son, and he's starting an interest group right now, people get so caught up in, you know, do I have enough of this? Do I check off this box? Do I check off that box? And one of the special things about Sigma Pi is you're never going to, and I think most fraternities, you're never going to be able to check off boxes in order to find the right people. You got to look deep inside their soul to see what kind of people they are. And it's funny. I mean, I know the creed, right? I know the creed. I can still do push-ups by doing the creed. But once you sit down and you think about it, one of the creeds of Sigma Pi is to diffuse culture and develop character in the service of God and man. And if you think about that, when you're out recruiting and you're out talking to guys, we're looking to diffuse culture and develop character. We're near Miramar, near where Top Gun used to be. So there's always fighter jets and helicopters flying over our house during the day. It is kind of cool to see some of the jet fighters going through. But it's about diffusing culture and developing character. And if you can look past people's culture and just look at that person and judge them individually, I think you have a better shot. And if you're just looking of, oh, I'm only going to join this house because that's that clique, or this house and that's that clique, I think you're going to miss out on being able to learn how to live with people, work with people, because Michael, I think you know this better than most, leading a diverse group of people. You're not going to like everybody, nor should you. Nor should you ever expect to like everybody, but you do need to learn how to work with people.
Yeah, I agree. Fraternity helps, especially before going out into your career. You're going to work with all kinds of people from all different corners of the world. And I think it prepares you for that, to be able to listen more, to be able to share your opinion, understand the differences, and still get along and still work together towards whatever that common goal is.
I did some crazy things that if there were social media and camera phones, I'm not sure how much trouble I would get in. I got in plenty of things that I could tell stories about all day long. But at the end, it's not about the stories, and it's not about the parties, and it's not about, going to UCLA for champagners, or going to ISVT, the inter-sorority volleyball tournament, and renting an RV. And one of the guys fell asleep in the sun, so I gave a bunch of sorority girls a Sharpie and had them sign their names so we wouldn't miss anything. It's none of that stuff. Those are great stories, but those are great stories that you share with your brothers, and we still get together, and our wives and kids will laugh at us like, oh my God, we put you four together and you act like you're 19 years old. You still act like little kids. And that's that bond that you have forever. I tell people, and I said this before, it happened. I was at the University of South Florida colonization, and I told all the guys, I said, listen, look at the guy next to you. He's going to be your brother, and you're going to know him for the rest of your life. I said, some of these guys are going to be your best men at your wedding. Some of these guys are going to give a eulogy for you one day, or they're going to be there. Sorry, I'm going to get choked up when I tell you this story. I said they're going to be there when your parents pass. And that's the kind of brotherhood that we have. That's the kind of brotherhood that fraternities bring. And lo and behold, probably 8 years later, my best friend in the world, my fraternity brother, was the one who gave the eulogy for my dad.
Wow.
He was the best man at my wedding, and I was so proud of him. And he gave the most beautiful eulogy for my dad. Sorry, when I talk about my dad, I get all choked up. Mm-hmm. But he gave that eulogy, and it was beautiful. And it was right what I told those kids at the University of South Florida. The guy next to you is going to be your brother. And some people like him better than their blood brothers. But he was the best man at my wedding, and he stood there and he eulogized my dad. Can you think of a greater bond?
I can't think of a greater bond than that. And I think it's a great lesson to undergraduates, and it really shows the value of fraternity, not just for 4 years while you're in college, but we're talking about a lifetime commitment to each other. And that is just a beautiful thing.
And he's the one who's responsible for the success that I've had in my life. Mm-hmm. So we went to lunch one day. And he said, hey, and we were big sports talk radio fans. And he said, hey, there's going to be a sports talk station starting up. We should go get a show. Like, haha, yeah, that's funny. Next day, we were having lunch again. He goes, hey, I went down to the station and I got a radio show. So we're going to do a radio show? And he goes, no, they only had money for me. So I got the radio show. I said, well, screw you. I know more than you. And I marched down to the radio station. I said, I heard you're hiring. You hired my buddy Dave. I'm better than him. I should get a show. The guy looks at me and goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you have a suit and tie, come back tomorrow, we'll give you a job. I'm like, okay, I need a job. So I came back the next day, and he goes, all right, here's your desk, here's your pager, here's your assistant, here's your computer. I said, I get all this to be on the radio. And he goes, no, you're a sales rep. And he takes the phone book and he hits me in the chest with it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, well, I guess I could sell. The first sale I made was to a fraternity brother, Rich Herrera. Thank you very much. His family signed a big contract, so I was off and running. And then I eventually said, I'm going to go back to I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to go back to school and finish my degree. I'm going to go do something else. I'm bored. And I talked my way into be the backup weekend morning if everybody else was sick sports guy for free. And that's how my career took off. So if it wasn't for Dave Zolfa talking me into by playing a joke on me to go get a job, I'm not sure what I do. So I was an economics major and thought I was going to go to law school. He was a communications major and wanted to be a sportscaster. So guess what he's doing?
I don't know.
He's a Superior Court judge in Kern County.
Oh my God.
So I wanted to go into the law. He wanted to go into sportscasting. I ended up being a sportscaster. He's become a judge. It's awesome. I'm so proud of him. When I get a chance to go into his court and see him, I'm like, oh my God, that's my fraternity brother. He's wearing the robe and Your Honor, and it's the most amazing thing. And then I've been able to share with him. He's gone on road trips with me when I broadcast games, and I took him to. He went with me to Shreveport, to the Independence Bowl. He's gone with me to the Las Vegas Bowl. So I've actually been able to share things with him for my career as he shared things for me. And if it wasn't for Sigma Pi, we never would have been together for any of this to happen. So it's part of the fortune of the fate and the blessings of joining a fraternity.
That's an incredible story. Now, I have a question for you. I don't even know if you're going to answer this because you seem to be like a humble kind of guy, but your career on sports radio is absolutely incredible. And I just have to say it, you are the first nationally syndicated Hispanic sports radio personality in the United States of America. Do you ever stop to think about the significance of that and what that means to future generations?
You know what? I had dinner during the baseball winter meetings here in San Diego, and I had dinner with two gentlemen, and they talked about diversity pioneers, both of them very, very successful, more successful than I. And we talked about that there are times where people will, and I don't think it's they're being bad. I don't think that they're evil or there's something impure in their heart. Just there's a disconnect. So I'll get people all the time that'll ask me, "What do you do?" So when I worked at Tampa Bay with the Rays, they go, "What do you do?" I go, "Oh, I'm one of the I host the pre and the post game show. I'm one of the broadcasters for the Tampa Bay Rays." They go, "Oh, I didn't know that the Rays did Spanish radio." And I go, "They do. It's not me. I don't speak a lick of Spanish."
Mm-hmm.
Oh. One of the other gentlemen said, that people always assume that he was an athlete because he's big, he's in great shape, but they never would think that there was a guy that has 2 degrees from Stanford that wasn't an athlete, and how did he get there if it wasn't through sports? So there are times where I'll think about it. There's times where people will automatically assume because of my last name that I'm a Spanish broadcaster. My grandparents came here, were migrants, or immigrants, and they said they didn't want us to learn Spanish. So my grandparents didn't teach us Spanish. In fact, they discouraged us. They said, if we're going to come to America, you're going to learn English and go to college and compete. We didn't come here for you to speak Spanish and work in the fields. And my son faces the same thing where people will walk up and immediately start speaking Spanish to him and goes, "I don't speak Spanish." And they go, "Why not?" "Because I'm American. I'm here to compete. I'm not here to fill whatever your biased roles are." So there are times when I first started my career where I call a place and go, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm a sports talk show host." They go, "Yeah, you're not going to work." And I'm like, "Do you want to hear my tape?" No. And or "We don't talk about soccer here" is one of the things I got in the early part of my career, and I've been doing this 25 years. I don't get that as much, but I try to give back and help kids as much as I can. And I tell people all the time, if you listen to my advice, just like when you're talking to pledges, you listen to my advice, I'll help you get to where you want to go. And I said, my goal for everybody is that one day I'll have to ask you for a job. And that's happened a couple of times. I've got a kid that's an executive with the New York Yankees that was an intern. I've got a guy that runs NFL radio that was one of my first producers. So there's a lot of my guys that have gone on. I just look for good, it's like the fraternity. I look for someone with good character, a strong work ethic, and I'm going to be on your side the entire time and help your career eclipse mine.
Very nice. Now, as far as your career goes, you started working as a post-game talk show host for the Golden State Warriors, the San Francisco Giants. You were a broadcaster.
I've been everywhere.
A's, talk show host and program director on Fox Sports Radio, director of radio operations for the Rays. Now you're a broadcaster for Major League Baseball Network Radio on Sirius XM Radio.
I just started filling in on CBS Sports Radio as well. So either I'm really good or I can't keep a job. I'll let you figure that one out. But I've been, Michael, I've seen so many great things. Like I saw Peyton Manning when he broke the touchdown record. I was like standing there, and he's running by me as he's going. I've ran on the field with the Buffalo in Colorado. I wanted to see what it was like. So when they were practicing, I stood there and ran next to him, and you could feel Ralphie's hooves hitting the ground. I did a Michigan football game. It was Lloyd Carr's last game. And I said, Coach, I need to talk to you at halftime to do the interview. And he said, hold on, kid. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And he starts walking. So I start walking. He starts running. I start running. The crowd's cheering. I look behind me, and it's Carr leading the Michigan Wolverines for the second half kickoff. And I'm running with him, leading the Michigan Wolverines onto the field. And he goes, all right, you know what? You deserve your interview. So I got our post-game our halftime interview right then and there. I've been fortunate enough to cover the World Series, All-Star games. I've seen so many great things. I got to meet Walter Cronkite one day. I was doing my show in Times Square, and I go out just to kind of look at the big screen because it's Times Square. And I look over and I hear this familiar voice, and it's Walter Cronkite. He was at a play, and it was intermission. He came outside to see what the score of the World Series was. I'm like, I'm standing here with Walter Cronkite. I mean, that was incredible. I've interviewed so many different people that it's been awesome. But the most special thing that I've been able to do, and again, I'll talk about my dad, who, by the way, they did not want me to join the fraternity. They were dead set against it. My mom and dad hated it until I got done with school, and they saw all of us grow up. And, you know, they're so proud of David and a lot of the other guys, and they come by the house and see them. But the highlight, I think, was the 2008 World Series. Rays go to the World Series. The most incredible thing. I mean, we're at the airport, and people are showing up, and, you know, thousands of people showing up to see us come back to the airport. Walking through the crowd, people high-fiving. My son, who was 8 at the time, climbs on top of the barricade and jumps in my arms, and I got a great photo of me holding him as we're walking through all these people with all the players. But one of the really special moments was after the World Series was over, the team allowed us to buy additional rings. So I got my American League Championship ring, and then the very next year, after we got ours, and I purchased the second one, I gave it to my dad. So my dad got to wear a championship ring, and that was one of the coolest things ever.
That's incredible. There are a ton of college students that are listening to us right now, and they would give anything to have a career like yours in sports. So what's your advice to other college students that might want to work for a baseball team or a football team?
You know, and I've worked I was on the road for a decade as a NFL sideline reporter. I spent 1.5 years as the poll reporter for Bellator MMA. I've covered golf, baseball. I did the Warriors postgame show when they were bad. I worked in the Western Hockey League doing play-by-play. So I've done a lot of stuff. But number one is you need to be and this goes for everybody. I don't care what you're doing. This goes for everybody. You got to be, you got to have, well, okay, a couple things. You got to have work ethic. So I get kids all the time. I'll give you a perfect example. When I came to San Diego to take over and run the Padres radio network, I interviewed probably 25 kids that were all getting done with school. Mm-hmm. But I was a jerk. I just told these kids, you don't want this job. I'm going to work you half to death. I'm going to be on your rear end. I am not an easy person to work for. And if you come back, know that you're not going to be on the air. You're not going to be given any choice assignments. You are going to work, and you are going to earn it. So the 25 kids that I talked to, one showed back up afterwards. And I said, okay. And I grinded him. I mean, I worked him, but I taught him as much as I can. And now he's taken off. He's actually one of our play-by-play announcers for our high school football. He's actually taken over for me doing the Padres pre- and post-game show. Wow. But he had work ethic, and he wasn't expecting something immediately. I got guys that, you know, that have tried to ask for jobs, and they have no experience, and they say that, I think I should have a show right now. I'm like, no, you suck. You need to go earn your bones. You need to go do this. Yeah. I had open heart surgery a couple years ago, and I asked the doctor, I said, do I need a second opinion? he goes, well, you can if you want. I said, how many of these have you done? He said, like 3 or 4. I'm like, 3 or 4, what? So we have the surgery, and he listened to me. He was a fan. That's when I worked with Bud McFarland in Tampa, and we did the afternoon show.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I said, hey, by the way, Doc, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, insult you by asking if you ever done this before. He goes, no. I thought it was pretty funny. He says, listen, here's the deal. He says, I tell this to my daughter, and I'll tell this to you, that in order to do something and be proficient at it, you need to do it 10,000 times. So if you're a kid coming out of college and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go work in Bristol, I'm going to go work at WFN, no, you need to do something 10,000 times to see if you're even good at it, proficient at it. I get guys all the time, hey, will you listen to my tape? How many years do you have? Oh, I've been doing this 1 year. No, because you don't even know if you're good at this or not. You haven't discovered your voice yet. That goes for everything. So the doctor said a virtuoso pianist needs to perform 10,000 times before they know if they're even good at playing the piano. He goes, first couple of people, I had no idea what I was doing. I was doing the heart surgery. Done 10,000 of them. I'm good at this now. He goes, same way you are. You've done over 10,000 radio shows. You can walk in there and do a show at any time, and I've done that before. Sure. But you have to be able to pay your dues, and so many kids right now don't want to pay their dues. So that's number one, is you got to be able to be willing to pay your dues and understand that it takes a while to get to where you want to be, and you can't be patient, because there's a lot of guys that I know are better broadcasters than I am. See, there you go. That are better broadcasters than I am, and they're selling real estate right now because they wouldn't wait, and they were so impatient, and they didn't want to pay their dues. So that's number one. Number two, have as much knowledge across the board, a breadth of knowledge as you can, because there's always going to be someone that knows more about your subject than you are, but don't let anybody have a wider range of interest than you. So when I was working for the Oakland A's, I had to go meet the play-by-play announcer, the legendary Bill King, the guy who had that great call, Madden, get your big butt off the field. He was the Warriors play-by-play announcer, the Raiders, the A's, one of the greatest wordsmiths of all time. So we sit down, and he goes, hey, what do you read? I said, oh, yeah, I read all the time. What do you read? The newspaper, Sports Illustrated? He goes, no, what do you read? And I said, well, I'm reading a autobiography of Joe DiMaggio. And he goes, no. He goes, what do you read? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, there's always going to be someone who knows more about your subject of interest than you. You've got to know more and be as well-rounded as you possibly can. Like, what? He goes, before we get to spring training, I want you to read the collective works of Winston Churchill, and we're going to talk about it when you get down to Arizona. I'm like, why? And he goes, if you're going to make your living using the Queen's English, you should learn from the greatest orator of all time. And that's what started me as being a history buff, because I wanted to be as well-rounded. I did a podcast, and it wasn't very good. Nobody listened to it, but it was interesting. I interviewed 33 different broadcasters. They were all history buffs, and they were all reading the same books because they knew they had to be well-rounded in order to add something different to the mix. So these were all top-of-the-line successful people, and it was interesting that they were all history buffs, so they could use the sword of Damocles hanging over somebody's head in a broadcast. And I think you need to be as well-rounded as you can. You need to work as hard as you can, and you need to make sure that you have your priorities straight. And that's something that I struggle with every day, balancing work, life, and family. Family's more important than anything else, and I think a lot of us forget about that while we're trying to get ahead.
Great advice. And I also see that you continue to be involved with lots of different charity work. I know the Children's Dream Fund and Make-A-Wish Foundation is important to you, which I love to see in a fraternity man. And by the way, Sigma Pi right now could definitely use a new national philanthropy that all the chapters get involved with, so that way they can make an even bigger impact with all the chapters around the country. So tell us more about some of the organizations you're working with in terms of charity work, and how can the undergrads help?
Well, I think you have to find something and have a passion for it. So, MS had been the national Sigma Pi charity for years, and then the Sam Spady Foundation, and then there's some others as well. But it taught me that you're supposed to give back. If you've been blessed enough to have some kind of success in your walk of the face of the earth, it's good to give back. So for instance, Tampa Bay, I noticed my first year there, they would have something they call Tuesdays Champions, and they have a kid with who's fighting cancer from Make-A-Wish or the Children's Dream Fund, which is a local charity down there. But they'd stand with interns, and the interns weren't allowed to talk to the players. They couldn't ask for autographs, and the kid kind of just stood there, and the parents were sitting up in the stands. And I was like, oh, that's not a very good experience for these kids. So I went to the team afterwards and said, hey, listen, can I take this over? And I'll host the kid, and I will take the kid down to the field, and I will do whatever I can. Can I get the team involved as well? And they said, okay, if you want to take your time and do that. So we ended up developing, and I went to Joe Madden, who was the manager at the time. I said, Skip, can you give the kid a couple minutes? Don Zimmer got involved with it. All the players would come over. We put the kid's picture up in the clubhouse, and I'm awful. I'm a horrible human being. So I'd meet when I tell you this story, here's a kid who's going through chemo maybe, and I'd meet him at the entrance, the VIP entrance to come into the stadium, and it would be the family, and a lot of times the siblings, there's sibling rivalry because everybody pays attention to the kid with cancer, but his healthy sibling kind of feels like they get neglected or nobody cares about them. So I made sure that it was a total communal family experience. So the kid would walk in with his family and his friends and his siblings. And I go, oh, ooh, did anybody tell you that you have to have a jersey to go on the field? And here's a poor kid who's just going through chemo. And I said, I can't let you on the field without a jersey. And I look at the parents, I go, didn't anybody contact you that he can't just walk in wearing a t-shirt? And the parents are mortified. Moms are crying. Kids are starting to break down. I'm like, all right, hold on. Let me see if I can do something for you. So I had a bag with the kid's name and his jersey that I had gotten for the clubhouse. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, let me see. Okay, wait a minute. What's your name? Okay. And I pull out the jersey. I go, okay, then wear this so you're like the rest of the team. And the kid's eyes light up. We give him a bat with his name engraved on it. We give him baseballs. We give baseballs to the siblings so they can get autographs. Champ stepped up and gave him a $100 gift card because I go, hey, your shoes aren't. What are those? And get the kid a new pair of shoes. I take him down to the field, and all the players saw his picture up in the locker room, so they knew to come over and say hi to him. And it turned out to be something that I would have to walk away because I just get so choked up watching these families that have been dealing with all of this go through and do what they've done. So I got involved with that. But that all goes back to the fraternity and philanthropy for all fraternities, not just Sigma Pi, for all fraternities, all sororities, all Greek organizations, gives so much back. But we never get credit for it because we do stupid things like hazing and parties and get arrested and do stupid things. We do more great things as Greeks and get probably the least amount of credit. I mean, the Hells Angels get more credit for their philanthropy than Greeks do. And we've got to figure out how to tell our story better, that we do good things in the community, and the people that we touch as undergrads will turn out to be people that we might work with in the future. And it's something that's so amazing that I wouldn't have known about giving back to my community had it not been for the fraternity.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same exact way. So we love to eat really good food here at Fraternity Foodie. So tell us, on the West Coast, what's your favorite place to eat that maybe people don't know anything about yet?
Oh, there's always Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, right? There's like 5 of them in LA. You never know who you're going to bump into while you're there. It's the sweetness of the waffles and the saltiness of the chicken that go together. That's fantastic. But I've got places that I go to in different cities when we travel. So, for instance, outside of Lambeau Field. So Lambeau Field, there's a parking lot, and there's a Walmart on the other side. In between the two is this little stand, this little, it's not a food truck, but it's this little stand, and they do cheese curds and hamburgers. So whenever we go to games, we would go to the cheese curds and hamburgers place and get the food as we walked into Lambeau Field. And then we go to Vince Lombardi Steakhouse the night before. That's a great place. Let's see, what else is there? Where else are great? I mean, if you ever go to Kansas City, it's now called Kansas City Joe's, but it was Oklahoma Joe's. David Price's dad took me and it was actually a barbecue joint inside a gas station. And you go through the line, zigzag through the line, past the Funyuns and the chips and the candy to get back to get barbecue. That place is amazing. Stroud's Fried Chicken in Kansas City is one of my favorites to go to. There's great here in San Diego. Petco Park has got Lucha Libre burritos. It's got Lolitas across the street. There's great food there. I mean, I can go on and on and on. If you go to Buffalo, Chef's Italian food, get the meatballs. It's great. So, yeah, I've eaten my way through the NFL and Major League Baseball.
That's why you're the perfect guest for this show, because I knew you'd have some great answers. So,
I did a food show here in San Diego that we produced for a while, and we go to different places. And one of the places we went was a Mexican restaurant across from San Diego State, and all the burritos were named after fraternities.
Yeah.
So
I think I know the
cool.
one.
So, yeah, so that was awesome.
That's awesome. So I have to ask you one baseball question, right? So the Astros fire their manager, they fire their GM, the Red Sox fire Alex Cora. Now maybe Carlos Beltran, they're talking about him possibly stepping down as manager of the Mets. So what do you make of this big scandal in Major League Baseball? And also, what should Yankee fans make of all of this?
All right, so cheating goes on. Cheating goes on all the time. Science, stealing, everything else. That's part of the game. Don Zimmer used to sit in the dugout, and he would look across, and they told me that he was the best at deciphering your signs. So if you're not good enough to if you're not good enough to hide your signs, then I'm going to be able to steal them, and that's okay. There's tipping pitches. There's Kevin Kennedy, who's a Dodger broadcaster who we work with on MLB Network Radio. He can watch a catcher and how he sets up, whether it's a fastball or a curve. If he sits up on his haunches, he thinks it's going to be a breaking ball, so he's trying to get a little bit of an advantage to get ready to throw the ball down to second. Those are things that go on in the game. When you cross the line, you use electronics, and it's not just you picking the signs from somebody else because they're not being careful, but you actually using technology. That's where the line is. I've known AJ Hinch since he was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He would do movie reviews for me on the radio. I'm friends with AJ. I think AJ tried to do the right thing. Unfortunately, he didn't. Again, this is all leadership. He probably should have. Well, not probably. He should have stood up more and said no. I mean, he broke the camera twice and told him to knock it off.
Mm-hmm.
But it continued to go on. I think this is going to be a wake-up call around all of sports, whether it's the Patriots shooting video across the way or teams using cameras and technology to steal signs and figure out what's going on. Once you get technology involved, then you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
And if you're a Yankee fan,
yeah.
And if you're a Yankee fan, come on, you've won a World Series on average, once every 4 years? You got 27 championships over a century. So once every 4 years, you've won a championship. Come on, you have nothing to complain about. Here's what I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear everybody complaining, oh, they should vacate the title and I got ripped off. Listen, it's life, right? It's life. Just deal with it. Just go on. Like Ricky Gervais said, you know what? They're just jokes. It's just go on with your little life. Don't get all upset. I stop people. I want to file a lawsuit. Just go on. Get on with your life. There's more important things for you to do.
You're probably right about that. So where can our listeners go to hear your voice on CBS, connect with you on social media? Where can they go to hear you?
My wife says no. My wife says, listen, she has to hear me enough. My son called me today and goes, Dad, how many times are you going to call me? Because he's going back to Albuquerque to the University of Mexico. He's actually reapplying to the Naval Academy and to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, where if he gets in, he's going to play baseball. But I talked to him like 6 times a day. He goes, Dad, nobody wants to hear from you anymore. Just stop it. Leave me alone. You can follow me on Twitter. RBI Rich is the easiest way. So right now I'm just kind of filling in on CBS Sports Radio when somebody needs a break, and then, have my other job here in San Diego. But that's the easiest way to find me.
Very good. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today. This has been great for all fraternity and sorority members all over the country. It's been a great interview. I've enjoyed it, and I hope that we get a chance to hang out pretty soon on the West Coast.
I would absolutely love it. And to all the Greeks that are listening, those in the fraternity, you know what? Keep doing what you do. Keep thinking about building character. Keep as tight as you can with your brothers. Enjoy yourself. Use common sense. So we stop having stupid articles in the newspaper about the bad stuff that we do. So we can concentrate on all of the great stuff that you do in the sororities. Same thing. We didn't talk that much about sororities, but the sisterhood that some of the ladies I know have, and how proud they are of DG and all the rest of the sororities and Pi Phi, Gamma Phi Beta. They're just as amazing, if not more, than the guys are. So, if you're an alumni or you're about to graduate, give back, because there's going to be someone that you might not know in a couple of years that's going to benefit for you giving back. And it's not just money. It seems like every time you hear from a fraternity or sorority, they're hitting you up for money. Volunteer your time, volunteer your talent, volunteer to make that difference in someone's life and pay it forward so they get a better experience than you got, and then they'll pay it forward as well. So get involved. Don't be afraid to stop by the house. Don't be afraid to reach out to the national or the regionals. Give back. We all owe that to the whole Greek fraternity and sorority society.
Dropping knowledge on Greek life. I love it, Rich. I absolutely love it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the listeners. And we'll see you on the next episode of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.